Marcus Hamilton and his family just wanted a relaxing weekend at Bayview Resort. They were platinum members who had paid their dues for years, but when they arrived, everything changed. A new manager decided they didn't belong. While white families walked right in, the Hamiltons were stopped, questioned, and told to wait. They could have left. They could have gone elsewhere. But Marcus Hamilton wasn't going to let discrimination go unchallenged. What began as a simple vacation became something much more powerful. Using documentation, witnesses, and strategic thinking, the Hamiltons uncovered a systematic pattern of discrimination that went far beyond one incident. Their stand for justice transformed Bayview Resort, changed state law, and created the Hamilton standard for equity across the industry. Sometimes, standing up for what's right is more important than sitting down to rest. Would you have the courage to stand your ground like the Hamiltons? Like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below about a time when you refused to accept discrimination. Marcus Hamilton adjusted his sunglasses as he steered the family's Mercedes SUV into the palm-lined entrance of Bayview Resort. At 55, the investment banker still maintained the athletic build of his college basketball days, though flecks of gray now peppered his close-cropped hair. "Finally," said Justine from the passenger seat, setting aside her medical journal. After 20 years as a pediatrician, she rarely traveled without work materials. "I can't remember the last time we all had a weekend together." From the back seat, their 21-year-old twins voiced their agreement. Zoe, home from her junior year at Howard University, was already snapping photos of the resort's pristine grounds for her Instagram. Marcus Jr., or MJ as everyone called him, removed his headphones, revealing the familiar ambient sounds of the legal podcasts he consumed voraciously as a first-year law student. "3 years as members, and we've only been here, Twice," Marcus said, pulling up to the valet stand. "Let's make this one count." The valet, a young man with a friendly smile, opened the doors. "Welcome back to Bayview, sir," he said, recognizing Marcus from their previous visits. As the family gathered their designer beach bags and sunscreen, Justine adjusted her flowing sundress. "Remember, dinner reservation at 7 p.m. at the Ocean View restaurant." The Hamiltons made their way to the exclusive members' entrance, a tasteful door of teak and frosted glass that led directly to the private beach area. Marcus handed over their membership cards to the attendant, a young woman named Kelly who had assisted them on their last visit. "Good morning, Mr. Hamilton," Kelly said warmly. "It's lovely to see you and your family again." Before she could complete the check-in process, a man in his 40s with a tight smile and a navy blazer too formal for the beachside setting stepped forward. His name tag read Richard Whitley, manager. "Is there a problem, Kelly?" Richard asked, his eyes narrowing as he glanced at the Hamilton family. "No problem at all, Mr. Whitley. The Hamiltons are members." Richard cut her off. "I'll handle this." He took the membership cards from Kelly's hands, examining them with exaggerated scrutiny. "Hamilton, I don't recall seeing you here before." "We've been members for 3 years," Marcus replied evenly. "We don't get to visit as often as we'd like due to our schedules." Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Well, it seems there might be a problem with your reservation. The beach is particularly crowded today." Marcus glanced past Richard toward the beach, which was noticeably half-empty. Through the glass doors, he could see several cabanas with reserved signs sitting unoccupied. "Our membership includes access regardless of reservations," Justine pointed out politely. "That's why we chose this tier." "Yes, well," Richard shuffled some papers at the desk. "Perhaps you could wait in the lobby while I sort this out. It might take some time." He gestured toward a small seating area well away from the beach entrance, where no other guests were waiting. As the Hamiltons reluctantly moved toward the waiting area, MJ nudged his father. "Dad, look." A white family of 4 approached the entrance without membership cards, simply stating a name. Richard greeted them warmly, and they were immediately escorted to a prime cabana on the beach. This happened twice more in the next 15 minutes as the Hamiltons waited, watching as white guests, some without reservations, were admitted without question while their membership cards remained in Richard's possession on the desk. "Marcus," Justine whispered, touching her husband's arm, "maybe we should just go to that new resort in Wilmington. I don't want the kids' weekend ruined." Zoe, who had been texting furiously, looked up. "Mom, we're not leaving. This is ridiculous." Marcus stood up, straightening his linen shirt. His expression was calm but determined. "Justine, the kids are right. We pay the same membership fees as everyone else. We belong here just as much as anyone." He walked back to the desk where Richard was now casually chatting with another employee. "Excuse me," Marcus said, his deep voice carrying just enough authority to make Richard turn. "My family has been waiting for 20 minutes now. I'd like to know exactly what the problem is with our membership." Richard's smile tightened. "As I mentioned, there seems to be a discrepancy." "What kind of discrepancy?" Marcus asked. "Our dues are paid automatically through my bank. Perhaps you could check your system again." Behind them, the twins stood shoulder to shoulder with Justine, their faces showing a mixture of indignation and resolve. They had seen this before, the subtle barriers, the unexplained problems that somehow only affected them. Richard's eyes darted between the Hamiltons and the other guests now starting to notice the conversation. I'm simply following protocol, Mr. Hamilton. I'm sure you understand the importance of proper procedures. Marcus met Richard's gaze steadily. Yes, I do understand procedures, and I also understand when they're being selectively applied. Now, are you going to honor our membership, or do I need to speak with your supervisor? The standoff had begun, and in that moment, Marcus knew their peaceful family weekend was about to become something far more significant. Richard Whitley leaned forward, lowering his voice. Mr. Hamilton, perhaps you and your family would be more comfortable at the public beach about 2 miles down the shore. It's quite nice this time of year. Marcus maintained his composure, though the implication was clear. We chose Bayview specifically for its amenities and privacy. That's why we pay $5,000 in annual membership fees. By now, several guests had paused to observe the interaction. Richard noticed the unwanted attention and attempted to regain control of the situation. Look, I'm simply following protocol for new members. We're not new members, Justine interjected, stepping forward with her phone. I have our digital membership cards and payment receipts for the past 3 years right here. Richard's face tightened. I'm not questioning whether you've paid, it's just that some of our more established members have expressed concerns about maintaining the resort's traditional atmosphere. MJ, with the analytical precision he was developing in law school, spoke up. Traditional atmosphere, could you clarify what you mean by that, sir? The manager shifted uncomfortably. Bayview has a certain clientele who expect a particular environment. And we don't fit that environment, Zoe asked pointedly, her phone now recording the conversation discreetly in her hand. An older white couple nearby exchanged glances. The woman approached, introducing herself as Dr. Patricia Winters. Richard, what's going on here? Are the Hamiltons having trouble checking in? She asked, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being heard. Richard straightened his posture. Dr. Winters, I'm handling a minor administrative issue. We've been members for 3 years but are apparently facing discrepancies with our membership that don't seem to apply to others, Marcus explained calmly. Dr. Winters frowned. That's odd. My husband and I forgot our cards entirely today and no one batted an eye. By now, Kelly, the young attendant, appeared increasingly uncomfortable. She glanced at the computer screen visible from her position. Mr. Whitley, she said quietly, the Hamiltons' membership is in perfect standing. Platinum level, actually. I'm aware of that, Richard snapped before catching himself. I mean, I'm still verifying certain details, Marcus noted the slip. So you acknowledge our membership is valid, yet you're still preventing us from accessing the facilities? I didn't say that, Richard replied, his composure cracking slightly. I'm simply being thorough. We've had incidents recently. What kind of incidents? Marcus pressed. Richard hesitated. There have been complaints about certain guests not adhering to club etiquette. Justine raised an eyebrow. And you assumed we would be among those guests. The tension was palpable as more onlookers gathered. Richard, realizing the situation was spiraling beyond his control, abruptly changed tactics. Perhaps I've been overly cautious. Let me check one more thing. He turned to the computer, making a show of examining their account. After a moment, he forced a smile. It appears everything is in order after all. My apologies for the delay. He extended their membership cards, but Marcus didn't immediately take them. I'd like to understand why we were singled out when other guests were admitted without question, Marcus said firmly. Richard's smile vanished. Sir, I've apologized for the inconvenience if you're going to make baseless accusations. They're not baseless if we all witnessed it, came a voice from behind. An older white gentleman had joined Dr. Winters. I'm Robert Chen, a board member here at Bayview. I couldn't help overhearing. Richard's face paled. Mr. Chen, I was simply following. Following what exactly? Mr. Chen interrupted, because it certainly wasn't our membership policy. He turned to the Hamiltons. I sincerely apologize for this treatment. Please allow me to personally escort you to your cabana. As Richard watched helplessly, Mr. Chen led the family toward the beach, but just as they were about to leave the check-in area, the situation took another turn. Actually, Marcus said, addressing Mr. Chen but loud enough for everyone to hear, before we proceed, I'd like to file a formal complaint about this incident. MJ stepped forward, law student instincts fully engaged, and I'd like the names of any witnesses willing to provide statements about what they observed today. Richard's face flushed with anger. Now see here. Mr. Whitley, Mr. Chen cut in sharply, I suggest you return to your office immediately. We'll discuss this matter later. As Richard retreated, the Hamiltons knew their weekend had irrevocably changed. What should have been a relaxing getaway had become a stand against the kind of discrimination they'd faced too many times before. But this time, they had witnesses, evidence, and unexpected allies. As the Hamiltons settled into their cabana, finally provided after Mr. Chen's intervention, Marcus wasn't content to simply enjoy the remainder of their day. With methodical precision, he began documenting the incident while the details remained fresh. "MJ, can you pull up the resort's membership policy on your phone?" Marcus asked, opening the Notes app on his own device. MJ nodded, already searching. "Got it, Dad." Section 4.3 explicitly states that Platinum members shall have unrestricted access to all facilities without prior reservation requirements. There's nothing about additional verification procedures. Justine, arranging their belongings, spoke quietly. "We need to be strategic about this. Making a scene won't help our case." "I'm not making a scene," Marcus replied. "I'm building documentation. There's a difference." Zoe finished uploading the video she'd discreetly recorded. "I've got the entire exchange saved. Should I send it to you?" "Yes, and back it up to the cloud," Marcus advised. "Also, that couple who intervened, we should speak with them if possible." As if on cue, Dr. Patricia Winters approached their cabana with her husband. "Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton, may we join you briefly?" The Hamiltons welcomed them, and Dr. Winters introduced her husband, Dr. James Winters, a retired history professor. "What happened to you at check-in was inexcusable," Patricia stated firmly. "James and I have been members for 15 years, and we've noticed changes since Richard became manager 6 months ago." "What kind of changes?" MJ asked, his legal training evident in his precise questioning. James Winters leaned forward. "Several of our friends, mostly non-white members, have mentioned similar administrative issues when Richard's on duty. Nothing explicit enough to file formal complaints, but a pattern nonetheless. Until today," Patricia added, "what we witnessed was blatant discrimination." Marcus studied them carefully. "Would you be willing to provide a statement to that effect?" "Absolutely," James confirmed without hesitation. "We're also having dinner with Robert Chen, the board member you met tonight. He's been troubled by member complaints but lacked first-hand evidence." The conversation was interrupted by Kelly, the check-in attendant, who approached nervously. "Mr. Hamilton, I wanted to apologize for what happened earlier. I should have spoken up sooner." "You tried to correct him," Justine said kindly. "We noticed." Kelly lowered her voice. "There's something you should know. Richard keeps separate notes on certain members in his private files. I've seen him flag accounts with comments like 'monitor closely' or 'verify ID always.' These flags only appear on accounts of non-white members." MJ's eyes widened. "Do you have access to these files?" "No, they're in his personal system, but I've seen them when he leaves his computer unlocked." She hesitated. "I could lose my job for telling you this." Marcus nodded understandingly. "We appreciate your integrity, Kelly. Would you be willing to document what you've observed if it came to that?" I think so. This isn't right." She handed Marcus her contact information before returning to her post. Zoe, who had been observing nearby cabanas, rejoined the group. "I've been chatting with other guests. 3 other black families mentioned having trouble checking in when Richard was on duty. One family had to wait almost an hour last month." Marcus methodically added these details to his notes. "We're establishing a pattern of behavior. That's crucial." Robert Chen arrived at their cabana, his expression serious. "Mr. Hamilton, I've reviewed the security footage from check-in. It confirms everything. Richard has been called to an emergency board meeting tomorrow morning." "Will we need to be present?" Marcus asked. "Not initially. First, we need to address this internally, but I would appreciate if you'd prepare a formal statement." As Robert left, MJ turned to his father. "Dad, this goes beyond one incident. If Kelly's right about those flagged accounts, this is systematic discrimination." Marcus nodded, his expression resolute. "Which is precisely why we need to handle this the right way. No emotional responses, no accusations without evidence. Just a methodical, documented case that cannot be dismissed." Justine squeezed her husband's hand. "They expected us to just leave, to give up our rights without a fight." "They picked the wrong family for that," Marcus replied, returning to his notes with renewed purpose. "Now, let's organize what we have so far and identify what else we need." The Hamilton family's beach vacation had transformed into something far more significant, a carefully orchestrated pursuit of accountability that was just beginning to unfold. By Sunday morning, what began as a single incident had evolved into a methodical investigation. From their cabana, the Hamiltons had transformed their beachside retreat into an impromptu command center, with MJ's legal pad filled with timeline details and witness statements. Marcus reviewed their findings while Justine contacted several colleagues who were also Bayview members. Their calls revealed a troubling pattern. "Dr. Garcia says she and her husband were told their membership was under review last month," Justine reported, adding notes to their shared document. "They nearly left until the weekend manager overrode Richard's decision." Marcus nodded, his expression grim. "That's the 7th report of similar treatment. All involving non-white members, all occurring after Richard became manager." Kelly, who had promised to share more information, approached during her break. She nervously glanced around before sitting down. I accessed the membership records, she said quietly. Richard created a classification system 6 months ago. There's a column labeled MC with numbers 1 through 5. Every account with a 4 or 5 belongs to a non-white member, and those are the ones flagged for additional verification. MJ looked up sharply. Does MC stand for what I think it does? Kelly nodded. Member category, but it's not an official Bayview designation. Richard implemented it himself. Did you document this? Marcus asked. Kelly handed him a flash drive. Screenshots of the database. I also found emails between Richard and some board members discussing ways to maintain the club's traditional character by making certain members feel less inclined to renew. Marcus carefully secured the flash drive. This could cost you your job, Kelly. Some things are more important than a summer job, she replied firmly. My parents raised me better than to stay silent. After Kelly left, Zoe pulled up an online search on her tablet. Dad, look at this. Richard worked at Oak Ridge Country Club before Bayview. They settled a discrimination lawsuit last year for $1.2 million. Was Richard named in the lawsuit? MJ asked, leaning over to read. Not specifically, but the timeline matches his departure from Oak Ridge and arrival here. Robert Chen arrived at their cabana, accompanied by 2 other board members, a distinguished older black woman introduced as Judge Martha Washington and a middle-aged South Asian man, Dr. Patel. Mr. Hamilton, Robert began, we've reviewed the security footage and spoken with several witnesses. The board has called an emergency meeting for 3 p.m. today. We'd like you and your family to attend. Richard will be there, Judge Washington added. We've suspended him pending investigation, but he's demanding to address the allegations personally. Marcus shared their findings, including Kelly's evidence of the systematic categorization of members. Dr. Patel examined the data with evident dismay. This explains the recent uptick in membership non-renewals. We assumed it was the fee increase. It wasn't fees driving people away, Marcus replied. It was being made to feel unwelcome in a place they paid to belong. Judge Washington's expression hardened. Robert, we need to notify legal counsel immediately. This goes beyond a single incident. As the board members departed, the Hamilton family prepared for the confrontation ahead. Marcus was reviewing their documentation when his phone rang, a colleague from the financial industry. Marcus, it's David. I heard about what happened at Bayview. Listen, I have information you should know. Richard Whitley approached our firm 3 months ago seeking investors for a private membership venture. He described it as exclusive and traditional coded language we all recognized. We declined, but he secured funding elsewhere. He's planning to leave Bayview? Marcus asked. No, he's planning to transform it. His investment deck included a 5-year plan to transition the membership demographic. It was all carefully worded, but the meaning was clear. After ending the call, Marcus shared this new information with his family. So this isn't just personal prejudice, MJ observed. It's a calculated business strategy. Justine checked her watch. The board meeting is in 2 hours. We need to organize everything we've collected. Marcus looked at his family, his wife and children who had come for a relaxing weekend and instead found themselves at the center of a fight for basic dignity and respect. They could have left yesterday, could have avoided the confrontation and found another place to enjoy their weekend, but that would have solved nothing. MJ, prepare a summary of the legal implications, Marcus directed. Zoe, organize the witness statements and timeline. Justine and I will address the board. As they prepared, Marcus received a text message from an unknown number. Be careful. Richard has powerful friends on the board. This goes deeper than you know. The sender identified themselves only as a concerned employee. The stakes had just been raised significantly, but the Hamiltons were more determined than ever to see this through. At precisely 3 p.m., the Hamiltons entered Bayview's executive boardroom. The room was dominated by a large mahogany table surrounded by 12 high-backed chairs, 10 of which were occupied by board members. Richard Whitley sat alone at one end, his lawyer beside him. The atmosphere was tense, with board members exchanging uneasy glances. Robert Chen opened the proceedings. This emergency meeting has been called to address serious allegations of discriminatory practices at Bayview Resort. For transparency, we're recording these proceedings with the consent of all parties. Marcus scanned the room, noting the board's composition: 5 white members, 3 black members, 1 Asian member, and 1 Latina woman. The power dynamics were immediately apparent from their seating arrangement. Judge Washington spoke next. Mr. Hamilton, please present your account of yesterday's incident. Marcus delivered a precise, chronological recounting of events, devoid of emotional language but rich in verifiable details. He concluded by referencing the 7 similar incidents they had documented from other members. This appears to be part of a systematic pattern rather than an isolated occurrence, Marcus stated, sliding folders to each board member. These contain witness statements, timestamped photographs, and a transcript of our interaction with Mr. Whitley. Richard's lawyer interjected. My client categorically denies any discriminatory intent. The Hamiltons were subjected to standard verification procedures applicable to all members. That claim is demonstrably false, MJ responded, stepping forward with analytical precision. During the 37 minutes we were detained at check-in, 11 white families entered without verification. Our documentation includes timestamps matching security footage. The lawyer attempted to interrupt, but Judge Washington silenced him with a raised hand. Mr. Whitley will have his opportunity to respond. Please continue, Mr. Hamilton. Marcus activated a tablet displaying a spreadsheet. With the assistance of a concerned employee, we've obtained evidence of an unauthorized classification system implemented by Mr. Whitley 6 months ago. Murmurs spread through the room as board members examined the data. Richard visibly paled. This spreadsheet categorizes members on a scale of 1-5, Marcus explained. Analysis shows a perfect correlation between categories 4-5 and non-white membership. These categories trigger what Mr. Whitley terms enhanced verification procedures. Richard's lawyer stood abruptly. This is absurd. That document was obtained illegally. Its provenance doesn't negate its contents, Judge Washington responded firmly, and the board has independently verified its authenticity through our system's administrator. Dr. Patel addressed Richard directly. Mr. Whitley, is this classification system your creation? It's merely an internal organizational tool, Richard replied defensively. The numbers reflect frequency of usage and membership status, not race. Justine calmly intervened. If that were true, the correlation with race would be statistically impossible. As a doctor who regularly reviews research methodology, I can state that this pattern has less than a 0.001% probability of occurring randomly. The Latina board member, who had introduced herself as Maria Gonzalez, spoke up. Mr. Whitley, my family has been members for 12 years. We rarely visit during peak season due to our travel schedule. According to your system, we're classified as a 5 despite our platinum status and 12-year tenure. Can you explain that? Richard shifted uncomfortably. Without reviewing your specific account. I've already reviewed it, Ms. Gonzalez interrupted. My account has perfect payment history and no incidents, yet carries your highest verification designation. Marcus then revealed their most damaging evidence. We've also obtained Mr. Whitley's investor presentation for what he calls Bayview 2.0, a 5-year plan to transition member demographics through selective enforcement of rules and creating friction points for certain member categories. The board members exchanged shocked glances as they reviewed the document. Richard finally lost his composure. This is a conspiracy. These people are trying to destroy what we've built here. Bayview has traditions, standards. Traditions of exclusion, Judge Washington asked sharply. You know exactly what I mean, Richard snapped before catching himself. I'm simply maintaining the environment our core members expect. The slip was devastating. Several board members visibly recoiled. Robert Chen addressed Richard directly. Mr. Whitley, are you suggesting that our core members expect a racially homogeneous environment? Before Richard could respond, his lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. Richard's face hardened as he stood. I have nothing further to say without my attorney present for private consultation. As Richard and his lawyer left for a private conference, the board members turned to the Hamiltons. Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton, Robert Chen said gravely, on behalf of Bayview Resort, I extend our deepest apologies. This behavior is unconscionable and directly contradicts our stated values. Apologies are appreciated, Marcus replied, but insufficient. We're not seeking personal compensation but systemic change. He slid forward a final document. These are our proposed remedies. The board members reviewed the Hamiltons' proposal in silence. It included immediate termination of Richard Whitley, a comprehensive audit of all membership practices, mandatory diversity training, and the establishment of a member oversight committee for equity and inclusion. Judge Washington nodded approvingly. These are reasonable and necessary measures. I move we adopt them in full. As the board prepared to vote, Richard burst back into the room. This is extortion. You're letting these people dictate club policy over a simple misunderstanding. Mr. Whitley, Robert Chen responded coldly, this meeting no longer requires your presence. Security will escort you out. As Richard was led away, still protesting loudly, the Hamiltons exchanged quiet glances. The confrontation had been difficult but necessary. They had come seeking leisure, but found themselves fighting a battle for dignity that would benefit countless others. The board voted unanimously to adopt their proposed remedies, bringing this chapter of the ordeal to a close, though the Hamiltons knew the real work of institutional change was just beginning. In the days following the emergency board meeting, Bayview Resort underwent a rapid transformation. The board, now acutely aware of their governance failures, moved with unprecedented efficiency to implement the Hamiltons' proposed remedies. Richard Whitley was formally terminated Monday morning. By Tuesday, the board had hired an independent auditing firm to comprehensively review all membership practices. The firm's preliminary findings revealed disturbing patterns extending beyond Richard's 6-month tenure, suggesting the resort had quietly enabled discriminatory practices for years while maintaining a veneer of inclusivity. At their hotel suite, Marcus methodically organized documentation of the incident while fielding calls from both members and media outlets. The story had begun circulating through Bayview's membership community, eliciting polarized reactions. The Washington Post called again, Justine said, setting down her phone. They've spoken with 5 other families who experienced similar treatment under Richard's management. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. This was never just about our family, we were simply the ones in a position to document it properly. MJ entered the suite, returning from a meeting with Kelly and several other staff members who had come forward with additional evidence. Dad, the staff collected internal emails dating back 8 months, MJ reported, opening his laptop. Richard was executing a coordinated strategy. Look at this message from December. The email, addressed to 3 board members not present at Sunday's emergency meeting, outlined a plan to gradually adjust the membership composition to align with founding values through selective enforcement of policies and enhanced scrutiny of certain membership categories. Those board members weren't at yesterday's meeting because they resigned this morning, MJ explained. The interim board chair contacted me an hour ago. Zoe, who had been monitoring social media, looked up from her tablet. We're trending locally. Other clubs and resorts in the region are facing questions about their own practices. Marcus considered this information carefully. This is evolving beyond Bayview. We need to be strategic about next steps. Robert Chen arrived at their suite that afternoon, accompanied by Judge Washington and Maria Gonzalez. They brought formal documentation of the board's actions. We've unanimously approved all your proposed remedies, Robert confirmed. Richard has been terminated without severance, and the 3 board members implicated in his emails have resigned. Judge Washington added, the remaining board members have all committed to the proposed diversity training program and establishing the oversight committee. We'd like to offer you a permanent position on that committee, Mr. Hamilton. I appreciate the offer, Marcus replied, but true change requires broader representation beyond our family. Which is why we're establishing a rotating committee of diverse members, Maria explained. Your expertise would be invaluable during the initial implementation. As they discussed the details, Justine received a call from Dr. Patricia Winters. Patricia says several longtime white members are organizing a protest against the new policies, Justine reported after ending the call. They're threatening to cancel their memberships. Let them, Judge Washington responded firmly. Any membership founded on exclusion isn't one we want to retain. Later that evening, the Hamiltons received an unexpected visitor, the resort's founder, 82-year-old James Bayview SR, who had retired from active management 10 years earlier. I built this place in 1980, Mr. Bayview stated, settling into an armchair. Back then, banks wouldn't lend to me because of my plans to create an inclusive resort. I had to mortgage everything I owned. The Hamiltons listened attentively as he continued. My vision was a place where anyone who could afford membership would be welcomed equally. Somewhere along the way, that vision was compromised. He looked directly at Marcus. I want to personally thank you for restoring it. Mr. Bayview then revealed that he had authorized a complete overhaul of the resort's governance structure. Effective immediately, the board will reflect our membership demographics. And I've arranged for every member affected by these discriminatory practices to receive a formal apology and compensation. Before leaving, Mr. Bayview asked a favor. Would your family consider hosting our reopening event next month? I want to send a clear message about Bayview's true values. As the week progressed, the Hamiltons witnessed tangible changes throughout the resort. Staff underwent initial training sessions, new inclusive policies were posted prominently, and the membership database was completely restructured to eliminate any trace of Richard's classification system. On their final day at Bayview, the Hamiltons enjoyed their first truly relaxing hours by the pool. As they prepared to depart, they were met by a group of staff and members who had gathered to express their gratitude. Kelly, who had been promoted to interim membership director, presented them with a commemorative plaque that would be permanently installed in the resort's main hall, in honor of the Hamilton family, whose courage and dignity reminded us that true luxury is found in equality and respect. Marcus accepted it with characteristic humility. This was never about recognition. It was about accountability and change. As they drove away from Bayview, the family reflected on how their weekend had transformed from a simple vacation into something far more significant, a stand against injustice that would impact countless families in the future. "Did we actually get any relaxation this weekend?" Zoe asked with a small laugh. "Sometimes," Marcus replied, glancing at his family with pride. "Standing up for what's right is more important than sitting down to rest." 6 months after the Bayview incident, the Hamilton family gathered in their living room to review a thick envelope that had arrived that morning. It contained the final report from the independent auditing firm, along with a comprehensive update on the changes implemented at Bayview Resort. "They've increased minority membership by 32% since May," MJ noted, reviewing the statistics. "The new application process removed all subjective evaluation criteria." Marcus nodded approvingly. "And the Oversight Committee has representatives from every demographic group in the membership base." The changes at Bayview had extended far beyond the resort itself. 3 other exclusive clubs in the region had proactively reformed their membership practices after Bayview's transformation made national headlines. The story had sparked a broader conversation about hidden discrimination in supposedly post-racial spaces. "Look at this," Justine said, showing them an article on her tablet. "The state legislature passed the Equitable Access Act last week. They're citing our case as a catalyst. The new legislation required all private clubs and resorts in the state to maintain transparent membership criteria and undergo regular equity audits." "Not bad for a weekend vacation," Zoe quipped, scrolling through photos from Bayview's reopening celebration, which the family had hosted as promised. That event had marked a turning point. Over 200 members attended, many of whom had never felt fully welcomed before. James Bayview SR had publicly recommitted to his original vision of true inclusivity, and the resort established a scholarship program providing memberships to promising students from underserved communities. Richard Whitley, meanwhile, had not faded quietly away. He had filed a wrongful termination lawsuit, claiming he was being scapegoated for institutionally approved practices. The case backfired spectacularly when his own emails and documentation became public record, revealing the calculated nature of his discrimination. "Did you see this?" MJ handed his father a business magazine. "Richard's trying to launch a new traditional club on the other side of the state, but investors are backing out after learning about his history." The doorbell rang, interrupting their conversation. It was Kelly, now Bayview's permanent membership director, delivering a special invitation. "The board would like your family to be guests of honor at Bayview's anniversary celebration next month," she explained. "They're dedicating the new diversity center in your name." While honored, Marcus hesitated. "We appreciate the gesture, but this was never about recognition for us." "It's not just recognition," Kelly clarified. "Your actions created measurable change. The Hamilton Center will house our new internship program for hospitality management students from historically black colleges." After Kelly departed, the family discussed the invitation. What had begun as a single stand against discrimination had evolved into something with lasting institutional impact. "You know," Justine reflected, "when we decided to stand our ground that day, I never imagined it would lead to all this." Marcus smiled thoughtfully. "That's always how change happens. Someone refuses to accept the unacceptable, then others find the courage to do the same." Later that evening, Marcus received a call from Robert Chen, now Bayview's board chairman. "Marcus, I wanted you to hear this first," Robert said. "3 other resort chains have adopted our equity framework. They're calling it the Hamilton Standard." After ending the call, Marcus joined his family on the patio where they were enjoying the evening breeze. He shared Robert's news, then added a personal reflection. "You know, my father faced situations like Bayview his entire life," Marcus said quietly, "but he never had witnesses willing to speak up or systems ready to hold people accountable." MJ nodded. "And most people still don't. Which is why we can't stop with one victory," Marcus replied. "Real change requires sustained effort." Zoe, who had been unusually quiet, looked up from her laptop. "I've been working on something," she revealed, turning the screen to show a website called Equity Witness. "It's a platform where people can document and report discriminatory experiences at businesses and institutions," she explained. "I've been developing it with my computer science classmates." Her family examined the site with evident pride. The platform included resources for documenting incidents, connections to legal aid, and a system for identifying patterns across locations. "This is exactly what's needed," Justine said, embracing her daughter. "Individual actions matter, but systemic solutions create lasting change." As evening settled around their home, the Hamiltons reflected on their unexpected journey from vacation to activism. What had begun as a simple stand for dignity had catalyzed meaningful reforms across multiple institutions. "So," Marcus asked with a smile, "where should we vacation next year?" "Somewhere relaxing," Justine insisted. "With good documentation systems," MJ added with a laugh. and a clear non-discrimination policy, Zoe concluded. They all knew that wherever they went, they would carry the lessons of Bayview with them, that standing up for justice, even in small moments, could ripple outward in ways no one could predict. Their weekend of confrontation had transformed into a legacy of change, one that would benefit countless families they would never meet. And that, they agreed, was worth far more than any vacation.